Caregivers, have you ever felt like nothing, I mean nothing is going right? Well, cheer up and welcome to Dave the Caregiver's Caregiver radio program, where you'll learn how to avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout and how to survive the grief process. You know, with roughly 100 million caregivers in the U.S. and Canada alone, that's about a third of the population. That means that everyone probably knows someone caring for a loved one. Join Dave and his guests now and every Wednesday at noon Pacific Time as they discuss avoiding caregiver burnout and surviving grief. So find a comfortable place to relax, kick up your feet, and prepare to feel better and to receive practical tips and tools that you can start using immediately to get you through today and every day so you can survive your tomorrows. But not just survive, but to live life fully and abundantly. Yes, you heard me right. That is a possible goal to achieve. And now, here's your host, Dave Nassani.
From Los Angeles. Oh, no, we're not in Los Angeles. From West Palm Beach, Florida. Sound like the Jackie Gleason show. From Miami Beach. It's not an LA welcome, but a big Miami welcome, a big West Palm Beach welcome. Boy, am I a fish out of water or what? To all my listeners out there in Radio Land, I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver. Let me catch my breath here. The Worldwide Blog Talk Radio Network and 7 other audio and video platforms, including YouTube, iTunes, where all our recorded podcasts and videocasts are saved for your later on-demand listening pleasure, including, of course, our website, caregiverscaregiver.com. And our goal here is to do our very best to help you avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout. And we have an exciting show planned for you today with my lovely co-host, founder of the Caregiver Hub, Cassidy Bastien. Say hello, Cassidy.
Hello, hello. Hello, everybody out there in Internet Wonderland.
Yes, she really is out there. Today we will be interviewing the one and only Mona Z. Dowda. You will not want to miss the show. Mona is a physical therapist assistant, and we're going to just be talking about physical therapy. And what's the hook of our show, Mona? You remember?
The pain that nobody wants.
The pain that nobody wants. And trust me, I've had a few physical therapy sessions. And one of my physical therapists is black and blue because I had to just hit them because they were hurting me so much. But hopefully you won't do that. So I'm your host, Dave Nassani. The show is the caregivers of every single kind. And the one thing we know about caregivers is that they are caring and selfless and sacrificial. And they love to help and give and give and give till there's nothing left to give. And then they burn out. And they're just wired that way. They just can't help it. And we can actually learn something from the airlines. Tell us in the event of an emergency, put your oxygen mask on first before you help your loved one with their mask. Hello, what an amazing metaphor for all of life. Take care of you first, not out of selfishness, but out of survival. Now, we also talk about grief and loss here and the devastating effects it can have on us. Anytime we suffer a loss, let's say you lose a boyfriend, a girlfriend, doctor tells you got 2 weeks to live, the attorney says you're going to go bankrupt, your wife serves you divorce papers, whatever it is, we're going to go through a grief process. And it's not pretty. It's, denial, anger, bargaining, all of that stuff. But the good thing about it is that, well, it's a good and bad thing, that you can't just, you got to go through it. You can't go around it, over it, under it. No shortcuts. You got to go through the grief or you're never going to get through it. So yeah, feel like you've been going through your grief for like 5 years, 10 years. That's way too long. And hopefully we can help you through your grief if you feel like, you're kind of stuck. And I do want to take this moment and thank my last week's guest, Caroline Olinger, speaking about seniors helping seniors. Great show. Just a reminder, you can listen to that interview and all of our interviews right here on our website, caregiverscaregiver.com. And just an update on me, I'm here in Florida, did my 24th show. Before that, I was in Tucson. Before that, I was in Albuquerque. Before that, Charlene and I were in Hawaii, which is my favorite place, of course, because the weather is just so wonderful. And we're on our way to New York, and we're just so grateful that God's opening doors, and we're just walking through those doors. And our book sales are going through the roof, and we're just so grateful. for all of your support. And so if you haven't bought our book yet, go check it out on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. It's My Life Too, Reclaim Your Caregiver Sanity by Learning When to Say Yes and When to Say No. It's perfect for caregivers who know they should be putting their needs first, but they just don't know how. So welcome to my guest. And Mona, I like to have my guests introduce themselves. So I would say, why in the world was Mona Z. Dowda put on this earth? What are you contributing to society?
Well, hi everybody. I think I was put on this earth to bring some joy and sunshine. I love to help. I love to give, and if I'm not able to do that on a daily basis, I'm not happy. There you go.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
And go ahead and introduce yourself, Cassidy. People haven't seen you in a long time on our show.
I know, right? It has been a long time. So I'm a certified nurse's aide of 15 years. I currently work in hospice.
Doesn't look that old, does she?
I started as a certified nurse's aide when I was 18, and I'll be 33 in May.
Wow.
So I'm roughly between 14 and 15 years. 15, I think, in June it'll be. But I currently work in hospice in the greater Seattle area. I am a founder and creator of a support group for caregivers, all caregivers, the Caregivers Hub on Facebook. There's 4,500 members all over the world in the Caregivers Hub. And we just focus on loving up on each other and creating a safe, comfortable, uncensored environment for people, for caregivers to come and share about their caregiving journeys. And I really love it because we have professional caregivers with family caregivers, and it allows us to kind of bridge that gap so we can work together, because I think that's seriously lacking in healthcare. So it's a great environment. I love what I do. How I'm contributing to society is, every day I wake up Monday through Friday and make sure that I'm providing the highest quality of care and that I can to every single patient that I have.
Wow. It's unusual where caregiver support groups have both paid and family caregivers. Tell us, because a lot of people are a little confused about the difference. Some people think that paid caregivers don't take their job as seriously, or I should say they're not as emotionally involved. But I know a lot of them who if their patient dies, man, they go into depression. Yeah. So what's the difference between a family and a paid caregiver emotionally from your experience?
So I think the main difference between professional caregivers and family caregivers, of course, is the fact that at the end of the day, professional caregivers, we get to go home. Unless you are a live-in caregiver, which I'm going to be honest, in this industry, it is more cost-effective to have live-in caregivers as opposed to having an hourly caregiver. And for me personally, I didn't even realize or understand what family caregivers went through until I did live in shifts 4 days a week, 24 hours a day for 2 years. And I ran the gamut of everything that family caregivers go through. I was burnt out. I was tired. I was up all night. I was sacrificing. I felt everything for this person. I felt like I was giving and giving and giving. And I kind of lost myself, which the universe took care of me because it kind of shuffled me on to my purpose. After, I was taking care of a client in her home for 2 years, and she ended up moving into an assisted living. And I kind of realized, I missed being in a clinical setting, and I missed being with other, not so isolated. It's an isolating thing. So the main difference is we get to go home as professional caregivers. And
Lucky
family
you.
caregivers don't. Exactly. They don't get to go home. And emotionally, there is a very big, there's a stigma around professional caregivers, right? And it's kind of due to society shining a light on all of the horrible crap that happens, as opposed to shining a light on those of us like myself who are dedicated to caring for other people's loved ones. And we do it for minimum pay with no respect. And we do it gladly because we love what we do. I mean, I've worked a lot of years for next to nothing. I've been through a lot. It's a lot going through not only what families put you through sometimes, what this industry puts professional caregivers through. You know, even as all of the experience and knowledge that I have after 15 years as a certified nurse's aide, there are still things within my knowledge is greater than my scope of practice sometimes, which is frustrating because this industry refuses to acknowledge that or hear those voices. So that's kind of my mission. That's
me
kind
cry
of
here. I'm starting to tear up by this poor kid.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, but
But
I'm
we're
not
all in the same
alone.
boat.
This
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
voice of professional
I'm crying
caregivers
for
all
me
over
too.
this.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, Mona, you work in this healthcare industry. You see what your patients go through as a PTA, and
Oh, yeah.
you know what the caregivers and you know the difference between a good caregiver who cares when they show up and how they interact with their patients and those who don't. And unfortunately, healthcare has become a billion-dollar industry where people are now profits, they're numbers, they're not human beings. And that's where we're operating from in this country.
Yeah. So now, obviously, any caregiver knows that eventually something's going to happen to their loved one. They're either going to fall or break a hip or God knows what. And we've got to call up Mona to come in and try to fix them. And tell us, Mona, what is the most common situation that you're called in, and do caregivers cooperate with the therapy process? Just give us,
Right.
educate us here.
Well, first, I'd like to just start out and say that I've been working in orthopedics, physical therapy, a private practice in orthopedics for 17 years. Before I came to Florida, I was working with head injury in a head injury center with a huge team. And so I've been working with people that have high needs, and they're not, just break a leg. These are people that have had strokes, Parkinson's, head injuries, motorcycle back accidents, motor vehicle, and so they've needed a lot of care. And I've seen the process from coma in the rehab center all the way to the discharge day of going home. Also, we've done home care visits, and we've checked out the environments that they are going home to, and very often people think they're just taking their loved one back to their house, to their normal bed, to their normal life, and everything has to be redone. What was the question you asked me?
What is the process, and do the caregivers generally cooperate with the therapy program,
Okay. Um,
or do they actually hamper it?
so down here in Florida, in South Florida, it's a huge senior population, especially right here where I live. And I'm working with seniors that are, I would say, between 65 and 104. And some of
Jerry
them,
Seinfeld's
there you
parents.
go, his mom. I did meet,
George Costanza. Okay.
I did actually meet Mrs. Costanza in Costco one day. She was between a mahjong game.
Of course she was.
But anyway, so the clientele that I work with, some of them have been extremely active, and some have been low functioning for, maybe 20, 30 years. A lot of them come in with their caregivers in very bad condition, and hopefully they leave we discharge them in much better. I would say the biggest things are their homes are very unsafe. There's a lot of falls that just go on in their home environment. And I think pretty much that's because they're not intentional. They're not paying attention to what they're doing. They're just in automatic mode.
But you're seeing this unsafe situation. It's too late by the time you get there.
Very much.
Didn't anybody come in the house just to inspect it? Like when my wife came out of the hospital after her stroke, they had people come and inspect. So, no, you're going to need a ramp here. You're going to need some guardrails here. You're going to need, bars in the bathroom, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
Who's dropping the ball here?
Well, I think, in this particular setting, a lot of our seniors are snowbirds. They relocate from one place to the other, and they may have the the bars and the steps and the ramps and everything in their other home, but in their summer or their winter home, they don't have those kinds of facilities. And also, it's
Their
difficult.
families aren't there either,
I was
right?
just
Their
going to say,
families
there's a
aren't
lot
there.
of throwaways. Families send their loved ones to the warm climate, but they come and see them maybe once a year, and they don't really follow through. So
George Costanza never visits his mother.
he needs that 1,500-mile buffer zone.
Absolutely. Well, and I want to elaborate on that because, I cut my teeth on nursing homes, right? And I did restorative programs for a long time and took a few restorative courses. And so what I feel the disconnect is, and you say, our caregivers dropping the ball with the rehab, right? Like, PT and rehab are doing what they can in the allotted amount of time that is covered by Medicare. And you can only do so much, and there's so many factors that come into that. And then you have certified nurses aides like myself who are responsible to provide range of motion and certain therapies during their activities of daily living. And what's happening in most settings is that we are overworked and understaffed, and the amount of care that goes into the allotted time that we have with each person, toileting and dressing and bathing seem to trump any type of restorative program that we need to carry through that our PTs and OTs put in place. So it's kind of the whole overall system, I think, that drops the ball with that. I mean, staffing affects that incredibly.
And can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
To that? I think that, again, we're talking broad spectrum, but to narrow it in, there are caregivers that have to, hold on, what's the word? They're accountable to families that are not even local. And so a lot of times what happens is you're speaking to the son or the daughter, and whoops, sorry. You're speaking to the son or the daughter, and until they give you an authorization or the release to do certain things, your hands are really just strapped. You're the one you're caring for says one thing, and sometimes the caregiver really is the one that's tuned into the environment and what's going on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We recently had a situation where a caregiver said, I've called the daughter 3-4 times. I've asked if we could get a better wheelchair or whatever. And, it's been very difficult to make those things happen. So sometimes it isn't the caregiver's problem. It's really the communication between the families and the patient.
Well, listen,
Moving on.
let's take a short break, and then we'll be right back, so don't go away.
Dave Nassani, the Caregiver's Caregiver, has just released his 6th book entitled It's My Life Too. Reclaim your caregiver sanity by learning when to say yes and when to say no. It was specifically written for caregivers who know they should be putting their needs first, but just don't know how. Dave is the sole caregiver to his wife, Charlene, since 1996. He knows firsthand what caregivers are going through, because he is one. And he now speaks all across the country, offering caregivers his incredible caregiver support package. Even the airlines tell us that in the event of an emergency, to put your oxygen mask on first, before you help your child with their mask. They know that those who don't heed their advice often black out, thus becoming unable to help either themselves or their child. And caregivers are exactly the same way. It's My Life Too. Reclaim your caregiver sanity by learning when to say yes and when to say no. Will help caregivers who are neglecting their sleep, diet, and social life, and learn to put their needs first. Pick up your copy today, or buy one for your special caregiver. On sale everywhere, and at caregiverscaregiver.com.
And we're back with Cassidy Bastien. You're not yawning on the show, are you?
No, my nose is.
Oh, good. Okay, well, that's okay. I like to embarrass you.
I know,
That's
right?
okay. And our special guest, Mona Z. Dowda. What does the Z stand for, by the way?
That's my maiden name, Zaloom, and I have to keep a little bit of that in my life.
So, yeah, while you were speaking, Mona was saying, yes, yes, I agree. So you two are on the same page. You
Oh, yeah.
definitely agree with each other.
Well, and I mean, she's, we're both right on so many levels. I mean, and I really respect what you do, Mona, because I know that it is so difficult when people are hurting and they're in pain and they're in a certain disease process, and you're trying to motivate these people to thrive when really sometimes they don't want to. They've lost their will to thrive, and then that's when they come to me. So it's two different things, but I can only imagine how rewarding it is to work with somebody from coma and to see them walk out of that facility, and that's some incredible work. Good job.
So give us a success story, Mona. You know, tell us a story, a real live situation where, it went maybe from a coma or it just everything turned out perfect.
Okay, well, I have one right now, actually. There's a woman that comes every year from Germany. Her family brings her to the warm weather. And she has just been recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. She's had arthritis and other problems, but she came with tremors. She couldn't get up out of a chair by herself, no transfer ability independently, wasn't able to swallow or eat. Getting in and out of the car, getting on and off the Palm Tram, which is our what do you call that? Transportation, to be able to get around. So really, she basically was 100% dependent, even getting in
And what
out
was
of
her
bed.
attitude as well?
Very discouraged when she came to Florida. She basically said, I was just diagnosed with Parkinson's. I've been suffering with this for 6 months, and I really feel hopeless. And tell me somebody has gotten better from this. She's telling me. And so she was evaluated by our physical therapist. We were very excited to see her again, but on the other hand, very sad to see her in this condition. We started from the beginning. One of the most important things you can do for these patients is to begin to teach them safety awareness so that the frequency of falls happens less. The other things we worked on are just very basic transfers, safe transfers, getting in and out of bed, beginning some exercise program with her. And then she also asked us to help her find a caregiver. She just came to this area and she said, a lot of caregivers come and they don't know how to help us. And some of them we're just afraid to bring in our home because we're not trusting. So there was like a big scenario. She brought us a big package to take care of. And she's been here for 8.5 weeks. She's a Medicare patient. And I'm so excited to say that we're discharging her in 2 weeks. And she's independent. So exciting.
Good.
How long did it take?
Took about 8 weeks for her to go from. She's actually riding the bus to our therapy
Way
place.
to go, Mona.
Yeah, I know. Not just me. Well, we've been throwing the ball and standing back and forth together.
Yeah.
She's been walking with a cane. She came in with a walker and a gait belt, and just with two people getting her out of the car and all this kind of stuff. So
how are the
exciting.
tremors?
She got on. Here's another thing. We were able to connect with the doctors, and through feedback, she's on the proper meds that help with tremors and help with the depression. And a lot of these things kind of go together. Bowel and bladder is much better, and just all her facilities to help her even be able to come out to an outpatient clinic.
Thank
You
God.
know, you know what I mean, we often see that on hospice too. We get people on hospice who just have really been in their homes with maybe next to no care, and as soon as we get the proper care and medication and everything going, they graduate from hospice because they are doing better, and it just takes those little things. But I always say I never underestimate the will of the human soul, like seriously, because it will do. Your mind will do incredible things. I had this lady, actually my client I took care of, my living client that I took care of, she had spinal stenosis, and Mayo Clinic told her no surgery, good luck. Everybody basically at every turn told her good luck. Pain clinics, here's more gabapentin. And I kind of came in and was like, well, what about massage therapy? Like, what about all this other stuff that you hear? And he kind of poo-pooed everything. And she was just really downtrodden, really, very much like your patient, Mona, not feeling like anything is going to work. Every avenue she'd turned, and this is a very independent businesswoman all her life, incredibly powerful woman. And to be in a vulnerable state like that was extremely difficult for her. And I remember this specific moment. I always like to say that everything happens for a reason, right? Like, I'm deeply spiritual, so I feel like I get little messages all of the time from the universe that tell me that things are going the right way. But
Us too.
right?
Absolutely.
One day we were going through everything, and we'd been to one massage therapist and we'd been to one pain clinic, and all of a sudden I saw this big ad in the paper. It was a big long thing about this clinic and spinal stenosis and pain therapies. And I thought, let's give this a try. What's it going to hurt? And so we called up and we got everything arranged. And I remember driving in this big old black Cadillac with her. And she says, well, I don't think this is going to work. And I said, well, you know what? I said, I'm never going to make you do something you don't want to do. I said, but if you're going to go into this with the thought that this isn't going to work, you may as well save your money and stay in this wheelchair because it's not going to work. And that was all the fuel that she needed. In essence, don't ever tell her she can't do something, because her entire life she'd been proving that she could. So she took the initiative. We went 5 days a week. She had decompression therapy. She had physical therapy, and she is now walking on her own with her 4-wheel walker, not falling. And I go and I see her in her assisted living every time, I go in there now, and that I have a patient in there. And that's the first thing she tells people, this lady got me walking again. So it's all about the willpower.
For sure.
Now, I want to ask both of you, what do you know about the Bioness system? Because, my wife is paralyzed on the right side neurologically, and she can't use her arm from like the deltoid down, and she has drop foot. They claim that this device that you put on your arm and on your leg can fix the drop foot, or maybe start using fingers again.
So it may be something that I've seen, but I don't necessarily know the name of. I do know that aren't there some type of, it's like a big, and I haven't seen it for a long time. It's like this big long metal thing that is like on a hydraulic, and it like, you put the leg in there and it will do that. But it's been a long time. So I don't know. Mona would probably know more than I do about that.
That particular item is very successful with a lot of patients. I think, one of the things that you have to be able to do going into it is be willing to let the sky's got to be the limit. You got to really believe that it's going to really make a difference. Anything new is scary, of course, and very expensive. So, the patient really has to be on board. And the other thing too is that I think the person that you go to that will be offering it has to really explain the possibilities of what they can do in some kind of reality, because you can't offer something like that and think the person's going to recover completely, but it will bring some function back and independence. And I think that's worth it, especially if that person wants it. It's worth bringing independence.
I think that can
function.
Yeah, I've always found like consistent range of motion on those limbs. Like every time, I had a man with MS that I took care of for 2 years in his home, and he was completely from neck down, for lack of a better word, a quad. He was completely paralyzed from, no body function, no mobility from the neck down. And we did extensive range of motion on his hands, his legs, his feet to avoid that drop foot and those contractures in those hands and those arms. And it's just that consistent moving of those limbs because they're not moving on their own. It is hard work. And that's where it lacks. We don't in skilled nursing facilities.
Sometimes it is so much work and the reward is so little. It's
Right.
like putting $100 down on the crap table, and when you win, you get a penny back. And that's
Right.
demotivating for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take one more break because
All right.
time is just really going pretty fast here. So we're going to be right back. Do not go away.
Anytime we suffer loss, we grieve. And a lot of people don't realize what even the grief process is. But it could be 5 to 7 steps ranging from denial, I don't believe this is happening, anger, oh my gosh, I'm so upset this is happening, to a form of bargaining, how can I get out of this, to depression, which is a very serious thing because that often leads to suicide. And then finally, after you realize you have no more control over your situation and you're totally okay with the new normal that it brings, that wonderful, wonderful place called acceptance.
Being a caregiver takes a special person with passion and compassion. But even you can become a little burned out from time to time. The Caregivers Caregiver radio show was developed to help you overcome obstacles, adversity, and burnout, as well as just having a place to rest, relax, and recharge your batteries. We've all been there, and you're not alone. Now, you can take the Caregivers Caregiver with you. Get the top 25 radio shows in convenient form that plugs right into your USB car stereo or computer. Learn the techniques, tips, and encouragement we all need to better handle the day-to-day challenges. For around $1 per show, just $29.77, get the credit card-sized USB card to have with you anytime you need a caregiver's pick-me-up. Just go to DaveTheCaregiversCaregiver.com and order yours today. Go to DaveTheCaregiversCaregiver.com now. Consider it an investment in you, and ultimately, an investment in them.
And we're back with Mona Z. Dowda and Cassidy Bastien, two wonderful women with caregiver hearts, right? Because you're a caregiver.
Absolutely.
And Mona is a caregiver as well. She's a
Absolutely.
caregiver to her mother and her father.
Right.
Awesome.
Because all of a sudden they got old. I don't know when it happened.
Right.
They were
it just happened.
Good 1 minute, and the next minute they got old. It's like Fiddler on the Roof. I don't remember getting older. When did they? So, Mona, talk about some of the things that, because our audience is mostly caregivers here, and so they're listening here. What do you wish you can just pound into the brain of a caregiver, that would really help make your job easier?
So I think number one is I hope they just know how appreciated they are. And I want to start with that one because appreciation makes our job so much easier. Whether your patient is not appreciative or not, just understanding that the difference that we make is eternal. I mean, God looks at it and he smiles upon us, that kindness and goodness that we bring. So there's things that I want my caregivers to bring to the table when they take care of our patients. And one of them is kindness and have a vision for that day. I was telling my husband as we were talking in the car that I've done some paid for caregiving, and I just don't babysit. I go and I bring topics to talk to them about. We use every opportunity to practice exercise. For instance, if we're not in a rush and we don't have to run to the doctor, we take our time doing transfers. So I'm saying caregivers, take your time doing transfers and walks and toilet training and some of these things, and let
Showering.
people showering. And, I know that we all want to get the task done and just move on, get it over with. But these are things, yeah, and that's really real too, because sometimes it's
Men are impatient.
backbreaking, and sometimes we're hot, and sometimes, the bending, lifting, twisting that we have to do is hard on our own personal bodies. So one of the things I want to bring up is to use good body mechanics. Love yourself enough to bend, lift, and twist. We call those the BLTs, and it's not food. Bending, lifting, twisting properly so that you preserve your body, so you can go home and be refreshed and enjoy your own life, and then come back on the job the next day.
Without a backache.
There you go. And if you do have a backache, you can treat yourself. There's great products out. I'm not marketing, but BioFreeze is a great product, and a little bit of ice on the back makes you feel refreshed and revived, and you're able to go back. Many people are caregiving to different levels of patients. Sometimes we're doing home health work, and sometimes you're actually rolling patients, lifting them, transferring them to wheelchairs, sometimes pushing them in and out of doorways. Their wheelchair. Whatever you're doing, be a little more maybe attentive to your own body mechanics, so that you can save yourself. So when you're 60 and 70, you don't need a caregiver yourself.
I'm with you on that boat for sure.
A couple other things I wanted to mention. I want caregivers to modify the environment that they're working in on a regular basis. See if you're able to declutter a little bit. What's the other word? Minimize. If you're tripping over the same piece of rug or the furnitures, and you keep getting like a little soccer, what do you call that? Kidney punch every time you back up, you're walking into a piece of furniture or something like that. How about see if it could be moved, kind of simplify a little.
Or
so
tape down to the floor. Rugs, duct tape can be your friend, right?
There you go. Yes,
I know. I saw duct tape on the rugs at your parents' house.
Right.
It's very beneficial.
It absolutely is. I am a caretaker for my mom and dad. My father's 89, my mom's 87. Her shoulders, back, neck, and ankles don't work that well. And my dad is, they can dress themselves and that kind of thing. He has a hard time bending. She has a hard time lifting. Together, they're just a recipe for falling. And so I've taken a few months, believe it or not, and little by little, as kindly as I can, gone in and made suggestions to kind of modify and make their world safe so that they can be independent in their own home.
Right.
We've also spent time organizing things, medications, where they're put, where things are placed, so that it's easy to find them. And, sometimes they're forgetful, and they're not senile, they're just forgetful. And so these are things that as caregivers, we can help bring suggestions and
But it's hard for them and others to minimize or to downsize or to organize.
Yes.
When should someone consider hiring a professional organizer?
As soon as possible. Seriously.
What are the benefits of one?
And I was going to say, a lot of times, families are, especially seniors, they've been coming down to their condos for years, and now they fall or something like that, and a caregiver comes in, and they don't realize they've collected 20 years of newspaper articles,
knickknacks, paddywhacks,
right, tchotchkes, all that kind of little stuff.
Yeah.
And so sometimes caregivers need to let family members know, like, the next time you come to visit, if you can kind of, maybe we can box the stuff, maybe we can move, whatever it takes to move it out of the way, because what has taken its place are hospital beds, walkers, canes.
You said something funny about your parents. You said they're always saying, "Oh, do you want this?" And you always say, "Yes, yes." Any opportunity to get something out of the house. Yes, I know somebody who wants that.
Sure.
And then she tosses it in the trash.
And then I take it to my house and I put it to stuff.
You're telling all our secrets, Dave.
Dave, and he's not telling you.
They're not going to watch this.
Those are his aunt and uncle that he's talking about. But it is very true. Minimizing brings safety, and it also helps us, because I don't know how many times I have moved the same thing out of the way to move a commode in after my dad's fallen, or after a while, I just kind of tuck things away and I don't bring them back. So
And
Right.
sometimes you can volunteer. You say, I've got a friend at church
Yeah,
who
there
would
you go.
love to have that. Oh, really? We'll take it.
yeah, and sometimes seniors, they have to find a home for everything. So if I tell them that I have a good home for it, they're very happy for me to take
Right.
it. So I wanted to say that. I also wanted to say that I wish our caregivers would make a set time for the patients to do a little exercise. When you come to our orthopedic clinic, you dress in your sneakers, you put on your gym clothes. It's like we make an event out of it. They come, they might spruce up their hair a little bit, brush their teeth, and they're coming and they're working out and they're motivated. And then when I give a home exercise program and they take it home, something like this, you can't really see it well, but I send something with pictures to follow. Within a week or so, there's just the lack of motivation. And so I say, you know what? Get the real equipment. Bring your TheraBand in. Get a small ball. Oops, I lost my hand. And try and follow, even if it's a couple of exercises you can do a day. Use every opportunity to work on transfers and that kind of thing.
That's the belt.
And
Right.
use a exercise belt, a gait belt, as much as you need to, again, save your back, and also you're not giving patients wedgies, which they don't like. Sorry. So those are just
Hashtag guilty.
I know, we
Guilty.
always can just grab the belt and whip the poor patient up. You feel so bad for them.
Let me throw in something
Yes,
there.
please.
When Charlene was having her physical and occupational therapy, we haven't mentioned occupational therapy because
Right.
that's just doing kinds of things that, explain it real fast. Occupational therapy, somebody. The
Go ahead,
difference
Cassidy.
difference
You wanna
between
Well,
physical therapy and
you
occupational
would
therapy.
know better than I,
Okay.
but I think, go for it. You go
I
for
was
it.
going to say OTs work a lot on dressing and just functional everyday
Right. Like, cooking
Eating.
stuff,
cooking,
like everyday stuff that they're going to do in their
showering.
homes.
Sure.
So my wife's a gourmet cook, and
Whoop, whoop.
and her mother was helping out during the 1 year period when she just got home. And her mother was a professional caregiver, not professional, but she had a couple of beds in her home for her parents and was getting paid by Social Security. So she was professional. I mean, they were
Right.
dying until they came to live with her, and then all of a sudden, she got them so healthy that they just wouldn't die, and they just lived forever. And so she was saying, "Oh no, honey, let me get that." My wife wanted to start cooking again, and she was, "Oh no, let me do that for you. Oh no, let me cook that for you." She's reaching for something on top. "Oh no, let me get that for you." Whereas I would say, "Oh come on, a little higher. Here, let me
That's
push you
true.
up a little bit. Stand on your toes." And so her mother thought I was just being mean,
No,
And
I get
sometimes
you.
Charlene would give me a dirty look as well, like, help me out here, And I say, no, you can do this. And one time the occupation says, "I love what you're doing." And I says, "Really?" She says, "Yes, you're helping her to be independent.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just going to create an invalid." And my wife is
Exactly.
very independent now. And I
Very.
got to yell at her.
Crazy.
She's in a power wheelchair and she's got something in her teeth and something under her arm and something she's balancing on her shoulder. That's way too many things. It's my fault. I
She's
created a
laughing
monster.
in another room.
Don't you know us women
The
can do all
monster.
things at all times?
Yeah.
No, that's
And so are
great.
caregivers.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, I think definitely from my perspective as a CNA, when we have high caseloads, it is definitely so much easier for us to just get it done, and do it. And we don't often realize that by not encouraging them to do what they can do, it does create people who are less independent because they've become reliant upon you to complete that task. And
And you lose your independence as a caregiver.
well, sometimes I
They
think
become high maintenance.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's just basically by, allowing yourself the time to do that for those people. And I do that in hospice all the time. People say, "Oh, we have to hurry." Usually I have an hour and a half to 2 hours at the max that I spend with each patient in a day. I have 5 to 6 patients within a 30 to 40-mile radius that I have to travel every day. And I've had upwards of 7 to 8 patients in a day. And this becomes a problem with healthcare is we are loading all these patients upon all of these people, and our quality of care gets driven down like extremely. And in like the best of worlds, we would all have the amount of time to allow every single person to properly do what we do and encourage them to do what they can do. Realistically, in this industry, it just doesn't happen. It's just not set up for us to thrive that way. And I love everything that you're saying. It's just, we do need to focus on these things. If I could tell caregivers one thing, I want you guys to show up and be accountable for the care that you provide. Be accountable for the care that you provide. Think about if you were that person in that setting, would you be happy with the care that you were provided? If you go in and give a bed bath and you don't clip nails and you don't clean out a mouth, WTF.
Yeah.
WTF.
And when the PT would come, for my wife, I had a choice. I could either, leave the room and let them do their thing and take a, Caldon break time,
Right.
or I could stay there and see what they're doing. And now I can help when they're gone to continue the therapy, which, sometimes my wife says, "This isn't therapy time." I says, "Every day is therapy time. Every minute is therapy time."
We've had families hover on us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I never back down from that ever. You know why? Ever. Because if they want, it's my responsibility to take care of that person how they want to be taken care of, how their families want them taken care of, and how their facilities want them taken care of. And when I have families and facilities in my business and they are telling me to do it a certain way, I never disregard what they have to say, because that family caregiver has been caring for that person for an incredible amount of time, and they know the ins and outs of those people more than I do. Cool. So, and I think that's one thing that we tend to do in healthcare is move in with our big scopes of practice and all of our knowledge and experience and swoop in on people and tell them how they need to be cared for instead of listening how they want to be cared for.
Good point.
This is a great time. It's just really going so fast. In the last 4 minutes, what do you want to give them to take away?
Well, ask her first.
Same question to Cassidy.
Like I said, you guys, just come from a place of compassion and respect and dignity for the people that you care for. And if you can't do that, don't be in this industry.
I know that's the missing ingredient so often.
Find something that's better suited for you. I understand it is extremely easy to get caregiving jobs, but it is more than just showing up and sitting on a couch and pulling out your cell phone for 8 hours a day to get a paycheck. You absolutely cannot do that. It's disrespectful. It's demeaning to the hard work that the rest of us do. So if this isn't
sticking your kid in front of the TV for 8 hours,
I don't know. I just wish I could pull all this goodness inside me and just give it to every caregiver so that
clone yourself.
I know. But I want you guys as caregivers to take what you do seriously and do it with love and respect and compassion for another human being. And understand that care is more than just physical. It's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual, and it's physical. We as human beings need all of those things to thrive in our everyday life. And if you need that to thrive, the people you care for in a diminished capacity need that too. So that's those are my words of wisdom.
Well said.
I can't add much to that.
You took the words right out of her mouth.
Amazing job.
Thank you.
Thank
you for what you guys do. Absolutely.
And let me tell you, caregiving is thankless sometimes.
You
Sometimes,
think?
well, it is if you're looking for the outward thank you. And for me, I know where my reward comes from. I know when I come home, I sleep peaceful because I know that I treated them as if I would want to be the way I would want to be treated. At the end of the day, the kindness and all that kind of thing. So to be honest with you, my reward is that's how I feel. That's one of my love languages. So I feel it like for
Absolutely.
myself. I don't
Mm.
need somebody else to tell me, but it does feel good. It
It
does, for
does.
Mm.
sure.
It does. And it
So there's a
wasn't
little bit of
until,
selfish feel good
There
here.
is,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
it's like
well,
if I don't get a thank you, don't stand there and wait
me
for it,
either. I mean,
you know?
it's always beautiful when somebody passes and the family recognizes the job that you've done with the
Absolutely.
care that you've provided. But honestly, like you said, for me, it is my personal interactions with these souls at the end of their lives when they are in these last moments of their lives that are worth all the accolades I could ever receive as a certified
Mm.
nurse's aide, because
To-
that's where it lies. That's where what I do and the importance of it lies, in those
Yeah.
moments.
Hmm. Well, as a hospice caregiver, to
Mhm.
me, you're the angels of the caregivers because
I'll take that. I used to say
very
no,
special,
but
very special.
I've had a lot of patients. I had one patient actually tell his wife before he passed, there's something in Cassidy's soul. And I kind of went, you know what? I think you're right. This is this is a divine thing. It happened for a reason, and I'm here doing this work for a reason.
Mm. God bless you, Cassidy. So,
Yeah, big
Thank you.
time.
what if somebody wants to get a hold of you, ask you some questions, or just pick your brain?
You can find me, Cassidy Bastien, on Facebook. You can find me in the Caregivers Hub. If you go into Facebook and search Caregivers Hub, you'll find our fan page, and you'll also find the avenues to our support group, the Caregivers Hub support group. And, since our community has been thriving so much, and we have professional caregivers and family caregivers, we have been approached with a lot of family caregivers who have businesses because they work from home. We have a lot of caregivers looking for jobs to provide care, and we have a lot of agencies looking for caregivers to provide care. So I kind of made a little sub support group called the Caregivers Hub Marketplace, and it's basically
Cool.
an open forum for anybody who wants to promote whatever. You can promote yourself, Dave, in the Caregivers Hub Marketplace.
Yeah.
So, I
Look
mean,
at you being all
yeah.
practical and everything.
Well, once we hit 4,000 members, and it just became so saturated that I wanted the Caregivers Hub support group to be for support, and
Mhm.
all of the business to be other places, somewhere else, so that
Yeah.
way the integrity with which I started the Caregivers Hub is maintained there always. But that people can promote what they're doing, because we have
Right.
dementia, Alzheimer's caregivers who've lost their loved ones, who have started making fiddle faddle blankets. You know what I mean? Those little fiddle blankets.
Yeah.
And we have caregivers out there who are on their own missions to create awareness in the
Sure.
Caregivers Hub Marketplace. And
Put your loved one to
so
work too.
why not?
Slave labor.
So you can find me on Facebook. You search for the Caregivers Hub, not the Caregivers Hub, just Caregivers Hub in Facebook, and it will pop
Yeah.
up support group or the fan page, and you can message me on that.
And Mona, how can people get a hold of you if they want to just kind of pick your brain or whatever?
They can call you, and you
Okay.
can connect them to me.
All
I'm a
right.
newbie at this.
There you go.
Well, thank you again. And again, thank you for tuning in, everybody, every Wednesday at noon. And we are, my website is caregiver.com. That's caregivers with an S, caregiverswithout.com. And just for going to our website and visiting our page, there's something called Are You a Candidate for Burnout? Take the short quiz, and I'm going to send you a copy of my first book, One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words, Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships, a story about my wife and I and how we managed to get through that 2 years of grief without killing each other. And so it's a great story. And I will see you guys next week. And God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver Radio Show. Make sure you tune in every Wednesday at noon Pacific Time and anytime afterwards on podcast to catch more of Dave and his tips to caregivers on avoiding burnout and surviving the grief process right here on the Worldwide Block Talk Radio Network. Goodbye.